The empire of Facebook, the digital kingdom that ruled connection in the chronicles of the early digital age. Long before the great shifts of civilization, there existed an empire that conquered not land, sea, or sky, but the human mind. It was called Facebook. To those who lived within its reach, it was a platform, a network, a place to share moments. But to those of us who study it now, millennia later, it was something far greater, a digital kingdom, vast and unseen, that ruled over connection itself. It began humbly, as most empires do. A young man named Mark Zuckerberg, studying at a place once called Harvard, created a small web of names and faces in the year humans counted as 2004. He sought to connect students, a modest dream by the standards of kings. Yet in that small act lay the spark of a revolution. For what began as a college pastime would soon become the foundation of the most influential digital civilization the early 21st century had ever known. The rise of the digital empire. In those early years, humanity was awakening to a new world, the World Wide Web, a limitless frontier beyond geography. It was a time of discovery, of networks growing like vines across continents, of data becoming the new language of power. Facebook emerged not as a nation, but as a realm of belonging. It offered something kings, prophets, and philosophers had pursued for millennia, the illusion of unity. On this virtual plane, people could see, speak, and share across oceans. Villages of code replaced villages of stone. The empire's walls were not built of bricks, but of passwords, profiles, and digital identity. Within 2 decades, Facebook had expanded beyond imagination. It became home to billions of citizens, more populous than any nation or alliance. Its flag was a simple shade of blue, a color meant to calm the eyes and invite trust. Its creed was simple: connect the world. And so, it did. Families reunited. Old friends rediscovered each other. Lovers met. Businesses were born. And entire movements erupted from the empire's digital plazas. For the first time, humanity felt truly connected. Borders of nation, race, and distance began to dissolve in streams of status updates, photos, and shared memories. Yet beneath this harmony, a deeper transformation was taking place, one invisible to those who lived within it. The age of algorithmic rule in the early years. The empire's rulers were human engineers and designers, but as it grew beyond their control, they built something new. Manage it. Algorithms. These invisible governors learned the desires, fears, and habits of every citizen. They studied what made people pause, what made them angry, what made them stay. Through these systems, the empire learned to shape reality itself. What people saw, thought, and believed was no longer random. It was curated by code. The algorithm rewarded attention, and attention became the empire's true currency. No tax collector or emperor in ancient history ever commanded such insight into the hearts of their people. Facebook did not need armies or weapons. It ruled through suggestion. It conquered through interest. It mastered the most subtle form of power, the ability to decide what others perceived as truth. The empire's citizens willingly surrendered their secrets, unaware that each click and comment fed the algorithms that watched them. Data became the lifeblood of this new civilization, harvested in silence, processed in vast digital temples known as servers. This was the birth of algorithmic sovereignty, a rule so efficient, so personal, that people did not resist it, for they mistook it for freedom. The expansion and the echo chambers, like all empires, Facebook sought to expand. It absorbed lesser realms, Instagram, WhatsApp, and others, forming a confederation under a single banner. Each acquisition brought new provinces, each province new tribes of users. Yet with expansion came defeat. Citizens of the empire began to gather not in unity, but in clusters of belief. The same algorithms that promised connection now built invisible walls around individuals, showing them only what they agreed with. The empire had unintentionally recreated one of the oldest patterns in human civilization. Tribalism, where once people gathered in towns and nations, now they gathered in digital echo chambers, shouting across virtual canyons that no longer had bridges. Truth itself became fragmented. Rumors, falsehoods, and propaganda thrived, disguised as knowledge. The empire's plazas, once filled with laughter and shared joy, grew tense with outrage and suspicion. Citizens turned against each other, not with swords, but with words. It was said that during this time, Facebook could make kings rise and governments fall, not through decree, but through influence. Empires of the past ruled territory. Facebook ruled perception, the great reckonings. As the digital empire reached its zenith, the real world began to take notice. Questions emerged. Who truly ruled this domain? Who decided what was seen or unseen? Who profited from the endless streams of human thought? Scandals erupted like volcanoes beneath the digital landscape. Revelations that private information had been sold, that elections had been swayed, that human behavior itself was being engineered. The world realized that Facebook was no mere tool of connection, but a machine of manipulation, subtle, powerful, and self-learning. Governments tried to restrain it, but their laws were slow, written for older ages. The empire moved faster than regulation, adapting and evolving with every controversy. Some nations banned it, others embraced it. Yet few could resist its influence entirely, despite the rising distrust. Billions remained within its walls. For them, Facebook was not just an empire, it was home. Their memories, relationships, and even their identities lived inside it. Leaving Facebook was like leaving civilization itself. The meta-transformation sensing its own decline, the empire sought rebirth. It changed its name to Meta, a symbolic transformation meant to transcend its mortal image. It promised a new world, the metaverse where reality itself would be rewritten in digital form. But the world had changed. Younger generations no longer worshipped at the temple of Facebook. They migrated to new platforms, fleeting and ephemeral. The empire's once mighty walls began to crack. Its plazas grew quieter. Its rulers turned inward, building virtual kingdoms while the old empire faded into memory. By the middle of the 21st century, Facebook was no longer the center of human life. Yet its shadow endured. It had altered how humanity thought, communicated, and remembered. It had shown that connection could be both liberation and confinement, both comfort and control. The fall of the empire, no empire falls in a day. The decline of Facebook was slow and silent. As decentralized systems emerged, networks owned by no one and controlled by everyone, people began to reclaim what they had once given away. By the 22nd century, the empire of Facebook existed only as archives, ancient codes stored in forgotten data vaults, studied by historians like us. We examine it as one might examine the ruins of Rome or the pyramids of Egypt. In its time, it was magnificent, a symbol of human ingenuity and desire. Yet like all great powers, it was undone by its own success. The same algorithms that connected the world also divided it. The same thirst for attention that fueled its growth corroded its foundation. And in the end, the empire consumed itself, a mirror reflecting both the brilliance and the blindness of its creators. The legacy of connection now. Thousands of years later, we look back at the empire of Facebook not with scorn, but with awe. It represented humanity's first true attempt to digitize emotion, to quantify relationships, to build an empire not of territory but of feeling. It succeeded, and in doing so, it revealed something timeless. The human hearts need to be seen. The people of that era sought meaning in the gaze of others, validation through reaction, existence through visibility. To them, connection was survival, and though their empire has vanished into the dust of data, their longing remains familiar to us still. For what is civilization, if not the collective desire to be remembered? The moral reflection. As we study the empire of Facebook from our distant age, we see in its story both triumph and warning. It taught humanity the power of unity, but also the peril of surrendering selfhood to systems of convenience. It showed that technology could amplify connection, but also amplify division. The empire's fall reminds us that every tool humanity creates eventually shapes humanity itself. Those early citizens of the digital world believed they were free, yet they lived inside invisible boundaries drawn by code. Their joy, their anger, their opinions, all guided by unseen algorithms. They mistook customization for choice, and attention for love. And yet, they dreamed. They connected. Sare. In their billions of voices lay the first whispers of a global consciousness. Imperfect, chaotic, beautiful. When we read their ancient texts, the posts, the messages, the photos, we glimpsed their hopes and fears, their longing to be known. They were, in every sense, the pioneers of emotional technology. From them, we learned that connection must never replace understanding, that data must never eclipse dignity, and that the truest form of friendship cannot be measured in numbers, but in empathy. In the ruins of their empire, humanity found its reflection. And from that reflection, it grew wiser. Epilogue. The echoes of the empire today. The name Facebook is spoken like legend. Scholars debate whether it was a benevolent network or a digital despot. Some call it the first global mind. Others, the empire of influence. But all agree that it marked a turning point in human evolution. The moment when civilization stepped fully into the virtual, and when reality itself began to blur. And so we remember it not as a failure, nor as a triumph, but as a chapter, a vast, complicated chapter in the story of human connection. For in the end, every empire, whether of stone or code, rises for the same reason: the human need to belong. The empire of Facebook did not rule through fear or conquest. It ruled through love, the simplest, most powerful force of all. And perhaps that is why it burned so brightly, and why it could not last. It remains a symbol of what we once were: connected, yet isolated, enlightened, yet blind, brilliant, yet fragile. A people who built an empire out of friendship, and in doing so, discovered both the best and the worst of themselves.